You want us to test? Okay, I think it works. It works?
Du sitzt da.
A wonderful good morning. We will start now with our press conference of Foundations 20. For all those of you who don't speak German, we have simultaneous interpretation into English, and also we have some headsets, so you will be able to follow the interpretation. So if you don't have one, please get one at the entrance out there. My name is Klaus Milke. I'm one of the 3 speakers of the Foundations 20 platform, a newly formed platform, a network of, meanwhile, 45 foundations worldwide, which commit to the responsibility in the context of G20 debates and the big challenges that we are facing for all humans on our planet. 45 foundations, of which some are represented with me here at the panel that is now focused here on the press conference, the representatives of the foundations that participate here. We have great speakers on our program, which we'll be able to hear after 2 p.m. They're not all here, or they're not here, but some of you, with some representatives of the press, it has already been agreed that directly after the press conference you'll be able to have some interviews. Please use that opportunity, and please approach after the end of the press conference. Please approach people, really. We have 6 speakers here in front. That is very ambitious, we know that, but for us it's important to make it clear that we have a wide range of different foundations from different parts of the world that are prepared to commit to the responsibility of the G20 agenda and the Paris agreement in times where it's really contested whether it should really apply to all states of this world, while all states of this world have decided it together 2 years ago in New York and then in Paris. So those are the things that we have planned to do. First of all, German foundations last year that said, in view of the German presidencies, German foundations really have to take a lead here. But then after they had formed a good group of German foundations, it was expanded to an international initiative. That was our intention, and we really achieved that. And now we have foundations in China, India, Argentina, Canada, Russia, Brazil, and so we're cooperating with them. There is still some room for improvement. We're now aware of that, but within a very short period of time, we've made it this far. However, we also need to admit that Trump a little bit helped us to create a positive attitude towards these issues, because you don't want to accept that what the federal government of the US, the signals that they send out, we don't want to accept those. So foundations take up that responsibility, and now we are 3 days before the actual summit. We know that a lot of things are at stake. Lots of things are going to be discussed also when it comes to implementation of climate commitments. There are new communiques that, if they are really passed, are more helpful, will be more helpful than what we have so far. But our clear signal as F20 is that those who have committed to Paris, who have decided in Paris that they will tackle decarbonization by the end of the century, they have to stay on board, and we expect from German presidency a lot. We don't do this alone. It's important to say that. We do it together with other engagement groups. This is something we want to make clear at today's event. So with business, B20, with the T20, the think tank, so C20, civil society, and Labor 20, so it's also the labor unions that worldwide are fighting for these issues, just as we do. Foundations are a bridge between those civil groups that I just mentioned, and we would like to really represent that bridge and fill out that function of a bridge. And this is something that's going to become clear in the contributions that we'll have just now. I'm very happy that right afterwards, there will be a press conference by the Senate of Hamburg, the government of Hamburg, the implementation of the climate goals at the level of the federal state of Hamburg. We have been expecting that, and it's really good that this is happening. So you could stay here, please stay here afterwards and take up that context, because also that city part is very important to us. The mayor of Paris will send a world of greetings today to our event, and the mayor Olaf Scholz of Hamburg will also be present. So many foundations are very closely intertwined with local areas. For example, Civil Foundation of Berlin is also here today. Now I hand the floor to Reza Ribera. She's the director of IDDRI, the Sustainability Institute, the very well-known Sustainability Institute in Paris, and the author of IDDRI. Together with the steering group, have drafted the publication that you have now in the press file, and it has already been submitted to the Sherpas, who will be meeting from today until Thursday. So 3 long days to really get out the best of it. And this publication is supposed to be encouragement. Teresa, please summarize the most important messages that we have intended to do with this publication.
Thank you for being here with us. Some short comments on some of the main messages out of this communication. The first and most relevant message is that the global transition to clean energy is going on. There are many signals that prove that things are happening. We count it as much as almost 100% of new installed capacity, electricity capacity, coming from renewable sources in 2000, from clean sources in 2015. We are witnessing a decline of the use of coal, and we are wondering to what extent we are reaching the peak oil demand. That means that there are plenty of opportunities that we could capture. That means that things are happening thanks to the fact that the good policies are starting to be in place, that the learning curves of many of these technologies and the innovations are helping into this transformation, and that there are many relevant changes in terms of priorities and values coming from the society that do pay attention to clean earth, to health issues, to the type of jobs they want to create and promote, and to the capacity to think and do things otherwise. All of this is great, but this is not enough. I think that it is important also to know that there are many risks that are still there and that we are still underperforming. We have to think in these trends in the context of other mega trends. We have to understand that there is a great demand of economic performance and growth coming from the emerging countries. We know that there is a digital revolution going on. We know that the global economy underperforms when dealing with inequalities, when dealing with distributional issues that can create a mistrust on the capacity to change things if fair on this revolution coming on. And connected to that, we know that there is still strong value related to fossil fuel assets that may put the global economy at risk. So we need to think in different terms. We need to place the right tools to get the full advantage of this great transformation. This means being open, ensuring that we can build different long-term pathways that are consistent with our goals, that allow us to understand, to anticipate, to see where the main opportunities may be, where the main challenges and risks may be, to anticipate them, to deal with them in order to prevent and avoid them, to speed up the transformation, to keep a global vision on what it is going on, and to be fully sure that we can get a conversation that we can relate our domestic priorities to the global trends, so that this conversation between the domestic priorities and the holistic approach coming from the very global vision, taking into consideration the deep interdependence between global issues and domestic issues in such a small planet we live, do go into the right directions. This drives us into two main conclusions. The first of them is that there are many things that should be done in the countries belonging to the G20, since they represent a great share of the economic and the energy and the emissions shares of the world. It can be done. We have been working in these long-term pathways, and there are pathways consistent with the 2 degrees goal. Even we will have to work harder to see to what extent we can develop consistent pathways with the 1.5 goal, but that could mean doubling our efforts in energy efficiency up to 2050. That could mean clean electricity, almost zero emissions in 2050, and that could mean a relevant shift from other final uses of energy to this clean electricity uses coming from industry, transport, or building demands. But we also wonder to what extent this should not mean a great additional engagement coming from the G20 as such, as a group. And that's part of the discussion, part of the proposals that we include in our report. Thanks, Klaus.
Thank you so much.
I hand the floor now to Dr. Michael Otto, founder of Otto Foundation and also co-initiator, main initiator of the 2 Degree Foundation of Entrepreneurs. The relevance of the publication which F20 has now put on the table in the context of the German energy transition, because the 2 Degree Foundation is doing a lot to move this forward. Mr. Otto, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here today and present our publication of the F20 Foundation Platform. We also have in this publication, we have positive examples of countries that are already on a good path to the right direction, which is the reduction of CO2 emissions. I have been dealing with environmental protection, natural protection, climate protection for more than 30 years in different foundations. I believe that especially the Paris agreement was a real milestone because the world community showed that there's no way back to fossil energies. No, we have to get to renewable energy economy, and that is a transformation process that has started. It is really irreversible. Of course, the most recent development has made me a little thinking that now the US has announced to step out of this. Of course, this is a wrong sign, and I really find it not good at all that this has happened. On the other hand, it really made me optimistic that so many federal states and cities in the United States, but also companies and foundations have clearly committed to climate protection, and they have said that they will not just continue their measures, but really strengthen them. So they have seen and realized that climate protection, if you tackle it in the right way, can be successful also for the economy. And we can see here in Germany nowadays that in the so-called green industry, we are employing more employees than in automotive industry. So there is the possibility that if you have an innovative approach to transformation to low CO2 emission economy, that you can be successful. Also, economically, only those who miss it will have problems in the future. But one thing is clear, the World Climate Agreement of Paris is not negotiable. I wish that in the future, the civil society, politics, and economy will take joint measures in the climate process, and I believe that you have to clearly see that we will surely also see large transformations in our society, and this is why it's so incredibly important that we intensely involve the civil society, and that is really the intention that we as foundation have, because only when you involve civil society, you will be able to take people on board, and that is decisive for a successful transformation process. Global transformation has already started and has been said already. Here, of course, what contributed is that in the meantime, renewable energies are fully competitive in terms of price with fossil energy, and the emissions, which we can feel in many countries, that builds up also pressure from people in these countries on politics, on the economy, to really force the transformation process. However, we need to say that the goals set by the global community so far are not sufficient in order to reach 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees. Here we need to adjust, and that's what I hope from the G20 summit, that they set more ambitious targets. So we call upon the heads of states and governments of the G20 to commit to Agenda 2030 and to the Paris Climate Agreement, and to implement according actions. That is a G20 mandate, so that topics on climate protection and sustainability will be included in the overall context. So they need to be included into economic politics and development politics. So economic politics should not be adopted at all without including climate politics. The implementation of the Paris Agreement needs to be followed by further G20 action, but also by national climate protection strategy and decarbonization strategies. That is, they have to implement clearly defined actions in the individual countries. Also, we need to set political framework conditions for the ratification of transformation. And here, especially the climate fund for developing countries, because developing countries are those countries which have contributed least to climate change and that are affected most. So it's important that we guarantee funding, and the sums that have been mentioned so far by far is not enough. So that needs to be topped up. And above all, we need to make sure that we transfer technologies, because the technological leap needs to take place, that no fallback to fossil energy can't happen, so that they will have right away a jump to sustainable energies or solar energies, because often those are the countries that are in, have a lot of sun. Also, we need an intensification of the change to renewable energies. So it's also necessary that we have a social cushioning, which is also can also be financed. When subsidizing of fossil energies were reduced, clearly we could use that for a social cushioning and social subsidies. So we claim that the final session of the G20 in Hamburg makes a clear statement with regards to the targets of Agenda 2030, global transformation, and the Paris Climate Agreement, backed up by concrete action. That is what we ask for. But if I say G20, G19 plus, I mean G20 minus United States, but plus those federal states and cities that still are committed to that. We have now Krishan Dhawan here from Indian Foundation Shakti, who does a lot for climate protection in India, and it's very exciting to hear which enormous developments are taking place in India right now. And maybe, Krishan, you could help us saying why is F20 good? Because probably the G20 presidency in 2019 will be in India.
It's really a pleasure to be here. As Klaus mentioned, I'm Krishan Dhawan with the Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation based in New Delhi. And it's a pleasure to be part of the F20 gathering here today in advance of the G20 meeting. Those of you who had a chance to look at the report can see it does an excellent job in summarizing both the global state of affairs, but in particular the progress India has made over the last few years in addressing climate change through a positive program focused around, in particular, renewable energy. There's been a lot that has happened for India over the last 3 years in the global venues, and India has been an active supporter of the Paris Agreement, and more recently the discussions that took place at Kigali on refrigerants. And India has also been behind the launch of a new international body called the International Solar Alliance. So it's been trying to do its role in trying to mobilize international resources for the transition to clean energy. More importantly for us, however, is what's been going on domestically within India. To set the context, we have a very large and growing population. We have more and more people moving to the cities. We still have very low per capita levels of consumption of energy. And with economic development, these can only increase. But what the country is trying to do in anticipation of these growing needs from urbanization and development is to embark on a very ambitious renewable energy program, which was announced 2 years ago, setting a target of 175 gigawatts of energy from renewable sources like wind and solar. And as a result of this investment and global conditions, we're pleased to see that the incremental prices of renewable energy, in particular solar energy, have dropped to levels that they're now competing with traditional sources from coal power plants, which has been the main source of power in the country thus far. The coal situation is being addressed. There's a coal cess, which is an ad valorem tax of 25% on the cost of coal, which is impacting coal consumption. All coal plants are being retired. And the new thermal power plant emission standards are significantly forcing power plant producers to invest in cleaning up the emissions that emanate from these plants. As a result, the significance outcome is that we do not expect any incremental investment in thermal coal capacity for the next 10 years. That gives us an incredible opportunity and a window of opportunity over the next 10 years to reinforce and entrench renewable energy and energy efficiency measures that have been undertaken in the country. A particular example is the progress the country's made through LED light bulbs, a fairly mundane topic, but given India's size, even small changes can make big differences. And from almost a zero market position, LED bulbs of about 500 million units have been sold over the last 2 years, creating a huge market. And the number is expected to hit 1 billion units being sold over the next 2 years. This 500 million light bulbs represents avoided energy generation of almost 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts. We believe that several measures like this around industrial efficiency, around elimination of subsidies on diesel, around the encouragement of replacement of kerosene by LPG will, and the announcement of fuel standards, we are leapfrogging the Euro 5 standard and going directly to Euro 6 by 2020. All of these will greatly contribute to the cleaning the environment and keeping the planet sustainable, and while at the same time meeting India's very significant developmental needs. A lot of this work has been made possible by civil society, funded by foundations like ourselves, and but much more needs to be done. We've just sort of begun our journey, and there are still significant challenges ahead in trying to meet and achieve the very ambitious targets we've set ourselves, and foundations have to step up to help this process along. The government's intentions are positive, but given the challenge of resources and technical knowledge, I think foundations can play a very significant role in making this happen. So we remain very optimistic that we will get to where we need to be and where we want to be. Of particular interest to my participation here, our participation here is there is a possibility that India may host the G20 meeting in 2019. That is yet to be decided. But if that happens, we really look forward to benefiting from the initiative taken here in Germany under the F20 and building upon the very good work done. So thank you very much.
Vielen Dank, Christian.
Thank you, Christian. I hand the floor now to Ms. Auma Obaba from Sautiku Foundation in Kenya, and she's the voice, basically, of those states that are not at the table with G20, but also the voice of civil society. And we also have here found together with the F20 platform.
Wie richtig gesagt worden ist, ich bin die Stimme von den Leuten, die nicht hier sind, also Grassroots-Perspektive. Und wenn ich an die Worte denke, Klimaschutz, Umweltschutz, Nachhaltigkeit,
I'm the voice of those who are not represented here, and if I think of things, climate protection, environmental protection, so grassroots, and so in the words of those, or in the eyes of those people in Kenya, it's just words. I mean, they might understand environmental protection because for thousands of years, we'll be able to feed ourselves, be able to protect our soil, and the world was fine for us in our part of the world. And then there was this new development, hundreds of years with all this revolution, and then it started to go wrong. So my work, what it does is trying to tell people there that we also have got a problem on our continent, in Africa, in Kenya, that the situation with climate protection and environmental protection is something we need to take seriously, because the way we used to live in the past and protected ourselves in the past, it's over now. And we need to be careful with what we still have, because the continent of Africa, we still have a chance. It's the last beacon of hope that we can bring back the world into good order, so that we shouldn't destroy that. The problem with this situation is when we talk about this, when you hear that, there's a lot of technical words that are being used. Renewable energy, solar, wind energy, to generate water, to generate power, etc., etc. Some of the people, majority of the people that I work with on that continent, they don't have running water and they don't have energy or electrical energy. So that what we're talking about is something that is more geared towards the Western lifestyle. And that is the problem, really, because we still have the chance to not acquiring these bad habits. We've got the chance to exercise prevention instead of correction and diagnosing how the problem can be solved. And that's where our work starts, and where Dr. Otto just rightly said, the talk about development aid, that is a wording that is against my whole work. It's not about development support. It's about cooperation. It's about realizing that cooperation with these countries, those so-called developing countries, third world, however you call them, those countries, that cooperation with them needs to be in the sense of a sustainable economic growth. It's about talking about economic situation in these countries with the people there, with the grassroots, in order to find out how you can take them on board in order to discuss environmental protection, climate protection. So where's our own benefit there? Because we also want to consume. The Western world has consumed, has all these nice things, and now they're telling us we shouldn't have that because it's bad, detrimental to the climate or the environment. We don't see that because we don't have running water, we don't have electrical energy. So how can we get together to say this is our common problem, it's our own benefit to do something against it, and we are also responsible to make the future better for our children. It's about the environment. When we talk about environment, we're talking about food and water. People need to be able to eat with an empty stomach. No one will lead any discussion about environmental protection or climate protection. If you have no water, there won't be any food, because you can't give any water to the plants. The majority of people in Africa are small farmers. They live from their land. They get fed from their land. That's nothing to be said about. It's something great, because it says that people that they have not these large farms using lots of chemicals. So the hope is really that these people can still feed themselves, still organically, with organic food. And this is how Foundation works, that we show to people that what they have, what they still have, is something that is good for their health. So if they are healthy, we have made great progress in their prosperity. If they can feed themselves, they are sometimes more prosperous than some people in Europe who have lots of money and completely sick of cancer, diabetes, and other, or stress, or other diseases that you get in our society here. So our attempt is an approach, a model where we say we have to redefine poverty, redefine prosperity. And with this new definition of poverty and prosperity, we get closer to where we say what is most important to us, so that we have that prosperity, that health. And so our environment is healthy, so that we have water to feed ourselves. And our lifestyle, we need to change it. We need to question what we have received in the past 100 years and after this colonialism. So everything that we've always heard in the past, this is the right thing, this is how you need to eat, we need to say stop now and ask, how can we feed ourselves better for our environment, so it works better here with our local resources, so that we can get to our prosperity, which we define differently. So for us, it's very important to have a focus on health, and nutrition and water. That is our big challenge, and that is a discussion that we need to lead with our governments, referring to the global context. Because if we talk in the global context and all that technology, I think my government, they turn to the West and starting to discuss with them and start to adapt. And that is the risk. Also with G20, the risk is that the African countries and other countries that have a different lifestyle, I wouldn't say underdeveloped, but a different lifestyle, you need to try to talk to them relating to their situation. We don't want to emanate, because that won't be successful. If you talk about solar energy and all that, people can't afford it so far. So we need to think what is possible on site, where people live, with the local resources that we have available. And then we need to raise awareness, start discussing with people there so that they understand that the danger, the risk that we are afraid of here, that certain concern, that they should also be concerned, and that their children will also experience that. And so that is important, that we can hear that voice, and that voice is represented at the table and is joined in the discussion. So majority of these people can't even talk to us because they understand, what does it have to do with us? Because we have no running water, we have no electricity. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we will continue with Mr. IDDRI from German Federal Foundation of the Environment, who is here participating in an international initiative, which it didn't used to be the core business of Bundesstädte Umwelt in the past, but Planetary Boundaries, Paris, 2030 agenda. So that is really a challenge. So Mr. IDDRI, please. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity to also present our foundation here. Deutsche Bundesstiftung Umwelt has the mandate to foster innovative environmental protection. We have a capital of 2.2 million euros, and our work, of course, the progressing climate change is one of the focus topics and of our foundation. With the Paris Climate Agreement and Agenda 2030, with the 17 sustainable targets, they can serve as a compass for us as how an economic, ecological, and socially just development can look like, which will provide to all human beings in the 21st century a life in dignity. And with the Paris Climate Agreement and the UN sustainability goals, basically a new era of international cooperation has been started. And we believe that the G20 states should now do justice to that change, to that transition, and that climate protection and sustainable development and Paris Climate Agreement should more quickly and more ambitiously be implemented than it has been the case in the past. A lot of decision makers, not just in governments, but also in civil society and economy, need to be convinced that prosperity is possible also within planetary boundaries, and we should not exceed our rooms for action. Johan Rockström, professor in Stockholm, he is one of the co-founder of the concept of planetary boundaries, and he summarized it very to the point. He said we needed 50 years in order to change the climate of the past 10,000 years, and the next 50 years will decide how the climate on this earth will look like in the coming 10,000 years. And it's important that climate protection does not only take place top-down internationally, but also involving civil society. So also economy and private sector, especially if it's not making any progress at the government level. We need resilient societies. Resilient societies means that they are also resilient against disturbances from the outside. So with view to all these challenges, we should not just desist, but say we just go on as we did in the past, but they need to take up the challenge to open up internationally, cooperate with other nations, and that's what it's going to make them resilient. And in order to make Paris a success, we need to cooperate not just between governments, but also in the economy and civil societies and the F20 platform. And this is why we, in the preparatory phase of the summit in Hamburg, we have participated. This platform can have an important bridging function between civil societies and G20 states, and foundations always have a great opportunity because they act outside the official political realm. That offers us a great room for action, which foundations can make use of. We do not only work with money, but we also set focuses, exercise responsibilities, and we have lots of small projects in all parts of societies, and we can show good examples. And going beyond government, we can also tell truth and work on solutions. Our foundation in the past 25 years has participated in several thousands of climate protection projects and invested more than €500 million. And that comes from a broad range. At the beginning of the 90s, still rotor blades were manufactured by hand, manually. And so the first semi-automatic rotor blade production is something that we subsidize. That was company Enercon. We work also in the area of innovative cooling system with water in order to avoid hazardous cooling agents. We work on efficient water technologies in countries in Africa. We provide support in energy saving for house owners. And in these projects, where you support individual households, tons of CO2 are reduced every year. So there's different little steps in different areas that help. So we also believe that in other parts of society, climate change is something that we need to tackle more. Just to give you one example, financial economy, which is also financing some projects which could have positive but also negative impact. So for us, it's a good sign that important actors in Germany, as for example, Allianz or AXA, have decided not anymore to invest into companies which in the area of carbon have their business focus. We have decided also some time ago that we are going to de-invest in that area. So it's an important realization that today in large societies we have some technologies available that make it unnecessary to just burn coal with all the negative impact. Maybe further generations can do more meaningful things with that coal. So it's important to send out these signals and hope that they can contribute to using these technologies, and that will bring us further. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Dietrich. Now our final speaker. And Ramiro, please keep it short. You are now the one who has the disadvantage of being the last speaker, but it's important to really mention what is the next G20 summit. The next G20 summit will be in Argentina, that's for sure. How are you looking forward to that?
It's now working? Yeah. Thanks. Thank you very much. The F20 group, under the leadership of German foundations, it just came in a critical time for us. When all sectors need to stand in favor of climate change and the Paris Agreement to keep it as a priority of the global agenda. As the report shows, this global transition on clean energy is already underway, but the pace of change is insufficient. And this is where foundations can play a critical role as bridge builders, connecting the good examples of civil society that you are supporting with the energy transformation going on and building new business models that ensure that are inclusive and are just transitions for all of us. That's where we can play a role. We already have foundations of 11 countries under the F20. And in this very first year, we find out that the diversity of this group is one of their main strengths. And for the first times, we have these type of foundations speaking with a common voice on climate change in the global agenda. And this is very, very important to have it. We're really expecting to have member of all 20 countries of the G20, joining us next year in Argentina. We're looking forward for it. As the report shows in the case study of Argentina, we are already making progress on climate and energy in different ways. Argentina is one of the first 3 countries in the world that revised their NDC, and by doing so, they not only enhance their ambition, but they engage all non-state actor participation, from local governments, civil society, foundations, and the private sector by doing so. And we are right now working on the roadmaps for implementation to doing this all together. This is a very good example to see. And on the energy area, we not only increase our renewable energy metrics in more than 3,000 new renewable energies coming in the next years that just been licitated last year. But we also have the commitment of the Minister of Energy to work with the Energy Scenarios Platform in a long-term energy vision that we expect to be presented next year under the G20. In the recent visit of Chancellor Merkel to Argentina, President Macri reinforced his commitment on climate change and the Paris Agreement. Argentina will need the support of Germany, France, India, China, and many other countries of the G20 and all the global community to keep progress on climate change under the G20 next year during its presidency. The government needs our support and our voices to be speak and laudable on support of climate change. We are really looking forward for the outcomes of this week, these next coming days, hoping that will set the basis for a good and robust progress on energy and climate during next year for Argentina. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now it's your turn.
Now it's your turn. I just would like to point out that we still have here some representatives of other foundations here at the panel: WWF, Planet Foundation, World Future Council, from Michael Otto Foundation. So if you have targeted questions to one of the foundations represented here, please feel free to ask. Please introduce yourselves quickly and introduce also the media that you represent. Are there any questions? Yes. The question is not being asked into the microphone, so it cannot be translated. The question cannot be translated if it's not asked into a microphone.
Yes. Gibt's ein Mikrofon für die?
Do you have a microphone? Otherwise, we cannot translate the question.
Yes. Oder kann ich mache es vielleicht erstmal auf Deutsch.
Maybe I do it in German. So we have a similar strategy. We have also decided end of 2015 to retreat from coal investments. We have an additional barrier. If a company, not 30% of sales are generated in coal sector, but has a significantly high market share, as for example RWE. They wouldn't fall under the 30% limit, but they have a significantly high market share in coal worldwide. So we decided to also de-invest here. We are guided here by recommendations by sustainability rating agencies, which basically provide lists to us of companies to which these criteria apply and which we are now starting step by step to de-invest. In the year 2016, at the beginning, we had still about 40 million euros invested in the area of carbon, and that share share has now been reduced to below 5 million by now. So a large share has been de-invested, and this is a strategy that we will step by step continue. In Germany, there are some few other financial market actors that act similarly. So Versorgungswerk der Presse, they have taken a similar decision as Allianz, and we hope that others will follow suit. However, unfortunately, in Germany, it's very few yet who are active in that realm. Well, oil and gas for us is a topic for the next years. We do it step by step because we also, of course, with our asset investments, we need to be broadly invested. And so we will step by step undergo this development in sustainable energy capital investments. We believe that carbon is most important because burning coal under ecological aspect is something that is not any more viable in the future.
Please do it in English, otherwise we try to translate your question. Herr Kreuzfeld.
You said that you see encouraging signals in the latest text communication you've seen. So far, what I've seen is that most of the ambitious things have been cancelled out in order to include Donald Trump. Can you say a bit more about what communiques you have seen? And what I'm hearing from the government side is that they are worried that it might not be a 19+1 decision if they keep strong, but maybe only 18+2 or 17 against 3 or something like that. Do you have clear signals that everybody among those 20, among those other 19 would go along with a strong position, or would Donald Trump have any allies?
Yeah. Our main message is not connected with a specific number like 19, 18, 17 or something like this, but we force the leaders of state coming to Hamburg to be the majority and to implement what they said in Paris, what they wanted to implement. That is the main message from our side. And we know that there is a critical point now in the negotiations. The last communique, what we have seen, is quite young, very young. And so perhaps it's a little bit more new than your knowledge is. And there is some basis which really is helpful. But what is our point? Paris, Mr. Otto said it, Paris, it's not negotiable. So what Paris brought on the table, that has to be implemented. There is no space and no, from the UN point of view, from the majority of the states in the world, there is no space for new negotiations from anybody. And so that is our main point, and we try as foundations to be part of the solution. So not only to ask others to do what they can, but to act in the right direction and to support what governments are doing. Manuel, you want to add something on this? Because Manuel was one of the negotiators in the process in Peru just before Paris, and perhaps he can give us some insight.
Yes, thank you very much. Two ideas in relation to your question. The first one it is that after that President Trump announcement in the United States, a lot, important group of non-state actors released this, we are still in, that it is really important to be clear that by working together, the non-state actors and the subnational government, we can face that kind of threats. But that is a domestic phrase. It is for the United States. So that is why, in case of WWF, we have already sent to the head of state and government an important message to say that together we can defend the Paris Agreement. So together we are enough strong to defend the Paris Agreement. And this is important not only for the G20, but for all the process. Because having to consideration that President Trump has already announced, but has not formalized in any way yet a decision. So he has 2.5 years for doing it. if he wants. So how can we keep momentum in relation to this strong reaction against this US in the time? It is very important. So we do need to keep that strength of the others, not only of the 19, but in some other fora, all the countries to defend the Paris Agreement. And my second reflection it is that if we would have needed to put a one-word title to this report and also to this press conference, it should have been together, because together and integration, because integration it is the key element to keep momentum of the Paris Agreement. Integration of the Paris Agreement and the development concept, and so the SDGs, integration of the non-state actors, it is very important. So integration of actors to defend the Paris Agreement, integration of the global objective with our domestic effort to enhance the NDCs, among some others. So I think that that concept of integration, it is the main idea of this F20, not only to the G20 countries, but also to our own strategies.
Thank you very much. Manuel Pulgar Vidal has been the environmental minister of Peru, and so he was in charge of the COP before Paris. Thank you very much. So, next questions from your side, please.
Sorry, we can't translate the question because we don't hear the question.
I translate shortly. Perhaps, Mr. Otto, you can answer both questions. One, what has to be done mostly here from German government and German actors. And second question is, what is with the Green Climate Fund we have now on the table since before Paris already, and how much must be done that it's enough, that there is enough money there? Perhaps, Manuel, you also can add something on this regarding the numbers we have already on the table. Mr. Otto, please.
Yeah, Germany, with no doubt, also has to make more efforts, especially in traffic policy, where by far we do not have yet targets that are sufficient in order to implement our decarbonization energy by 2050. But we have always also said that it's important to have milestone targets, so 2020, 2030. Those milestone targets are not yet sufficient in traffic policies, but also phasing out carbon. In Germany, that was very much diluted. First, we had much more ambitious targets. Now a very general statement has been made, and we need to make very clear statements that, of course, phasing out carbon needs to be cushioned social-wise. That is clear. It's also possible. We know from other industries that it is possible indeed, and so Germany must also have indeed more ambitious targets. In terms of the climate fund for the third world, I believe the exact figures can be provided by my colleague. Here, I do not have the exact figures in mind. I just know that we have about 10–15% of the committed volume yet only, though, so that needs to be topped up.
From this very moment?
I don't have the exact amount also, but what it is clear, it is around 10–15% probably. Okay. But what it is clear, it is that still we do need to define clearly, not only for mitigation, but also for adaptation, because that is something that it is behind of the mitigation calculation of how much money we do need to face our challenges. And I fully agree with Otto about of the need of defining milestone. I think that the issue of defining milestone, the 2020, it is a key time that we don't need to push forward. And after that, the 2030 and the 2050 for a carbon neutral economy. It is clear what Mission 2020 has already identified. The need to have 2020 as the time, the deadline to peak emission. Things are going well enough. We don't need to make a big effort to deal with the energy target, because we don't need to be around 25% of renewable by 2020 as a way to have clearly 2050 with a carbon neutral economy. In transport, it is interesting. Transport has already advanced, but not too much. Vehicles with zero emissions are not enough in the total, but the rate, the annual rate of growing, it is more than 600%, probably mostly because of Asia. But in which we don't need to make a big effort because we are behind, it is in deforestation and land use change. Unfortunately, the deforestation rate and the fulfillment of the New York Declaration on Forests or the Bond Challenge, it is not working really well, and we do need to make an extra effort to achieve that target.
Thank you very much. One short addition from Teresa.
Half a minute to say that this is precisely an issue where G20 action should be enhanced. So 100 billion by 2020 being mobilized is fantastic, but we need 100% of the whole investment flows of the world being climate resilient and climate proof and climate consistent. And greening the finance, ensuring that any decision on finance, avoiding systemic risk for the global economy, deals, matches with the Paris Agreement is something where the G20 can be very helpful.
So thank you very much. We have to finish now the press conference because the next is before the door. We have to leave the room quite quickly, and those who have already arrangements with some of the in the event in the town hall in some hours. Yeah, it's difficult. Schön. Ja,